Hi knitters, welcome to episode 13 of PJ Knits. And this episode is entitled Go-Go Knitting Gadgets, which I'll talk about later. It is Thursday, August 23rd, and if you can hear the background noise, the birds are singing and the windows are open, which means it's a cool 57 degrees today in central Illinois, but unfortunately, with this wonderful weather, comes tomorrow, Friday, which is supposed to be gloomy and rainy, which would be a perfect day to stay home and knit, wouldn't it? And then hot next weekend, but you know what? We're so fortunate we have air conditioning that we can stay inside and still enjoy our big window that we look out upon here and do some knitting and some other fun things this weekend. So I can't believe that Labor Day is almost amongst us. Before you know it, it will be here and be the last holiday before what I'm going to call the official fall, although we can attest to the fact that sometimes in September and in October it can be quite warm. With September here in central Illinois comes a weekend here in Pekin, what we call Marigold Festival, and it can be quite hot when they have that, but still it's enjoyable. Anyway, let's get started. I have lots of things I want to talk to you about today, and I would keep an eye on the time so it doesn't go very far. Today is hospice day, so I have that in sight to go to, and always look forward to that time that I spend with my hospice sisters. So that's going to be some fun this morning before heading off to work, and then knitting tonight with the Peoria Knitwits. So it's going to be a great day. I hope you're having a great day too, a great weekend, or whatever you are watching. Thanks for coming back. Last weekend, I had what I call the fish or cut bait weekend. Upstairs, I am so fortunate to have a huge spare room. In a length of a wall, I have what I call my yarn room. And years ago, my friend Norma's daughter-in-law made me a haul tree with pegs hanging out on it. And originally, that haul tree was for hanging our Vera Bradley bags on so we could easily grab them. Well, mine lately has gravitated in the last few years to huge canvas bags that had projects in them, in progress, of course. And they've been there, some of them, for quite some time. And they kind of sort of, I don't know if your projects do this too, but old ones tend to taunt me. And these were taunting me. I was never coming back to them. So last weekend, I hauled them all off the tree and went through each of the bags. And to be quite honest, I was brutal with them. I probably gained about 12 to 15 sets of needles. I reclaimed some of the yarn, I clipped off what was in use and threw it away. And then the other yarns are being donated to various places over the next year. And then some, quite frankly, it was time for the whole thing to go. And so I had a lot of trash this week that was in yarn, and it was liberating, and I don't feel bad about it, and I will not be shamed into feeling bad about it. But anyway, fish or cut bait weekend, and I probably only salvaged maybe 1 or 2 projects out of that, and it just feels so good. And that's not all my works in progress, let's just say that. I have some recent ones, and I'll deal with those at a later time, but all of those are potentially on the chopping block as well down the road. And so anyway, it was fish or cut bait weekend, and I feel good today about it. There's some zen going on with it. So anyway, let's just jump into my sweater project, MSP. September 1st, we're starting a knit along on the PJ Knits Ravelry thread, and we're going to knit Veronica by Very Shannon. This one's coming up. I've talked about this particular one before. I am loving this, and a couple of friends are knitting this from ZK, and they really got me centered on going back to knitting that. So I'm looking forward to that. We're starting that on September 1st. And if you'd like to join in on PJ Knits, we'd love to have you. Go out and talk in the thread and show us your yarn. Show us what you're going to knit it out of. Mine, as I've told you before, I picked up at Stitches Midwest from Yoth. And this is a worsted weight in Concord Grape, and I'm looking forward to it. I swatched last weekend on it, and so I'm set with what I know what my needles are going to be. And so I'm just kind of looking forward. I can't wait to start. Can't wait for the 1st of September to start knitting on this and have a project ready for when it gets chilly and for at work and knitting in other places. So what we're going to do is, if you post out on Instagram as well, it's hashtag Veronica Cardy, and I'm going to hashtag also PJ Knits Veronica, so that I can kind of keep tabs on my project as well. So I'm hoping that we'll have some more people want to join in on us, or just if you've already knit it, talk about it on the thread. Tell us your thoughts on it, and pitfalls or things that we should look out for. We'd love to have your input if you've already knit it. So please join us there to talk about the Veronica Cardy. So that's what I have in on tap for coming up, and I'm super excited. But before I can do that, I have to finish a baby blanket for the gal who does my hair, and it has a deadline of September 11th. Has to be ready to go because that's my next appointment. And so I am working on this, and it's quite boring, to tell you the truth. If you remember a few weeks ago, I talked about the DMC Hug This kit. And so this is one of those that's going to go in that. And it had several patterns, but I needed something for this particular one just to not have to pay a whole lot of attention on, to take to knitting and do at lunch. I just didn't want to, and watch at ball games, I didn't want to have to put a lot of thought into it. And I love this one. It's the Grandmother's Dishcloth pattern, a variation of it. And so I'm working on it. I'm on the decreases right now. And this is out of the yarn that came with the kit. And I'm just doing a simple, the Grandmother's Dishcloth with no holes pattern on it. And like I said, it's kind of boring, but I cannot knit on anything else until this is finished. So that's the carrot to get this done. And I'm hoping that maybe this weekend, I had plotted it out where I had to do 8 rows a night, and I haven't done that last night, but I really want it done before next weekend and block, so that one's out of my hair. So I'm looking forward to getting that particular one done and off the needles. So I've got in sights what's going to be next. Transitional sweaters. We've had some great ideas in the thread on PJ Knits on Ravelry. And it's funny, since I started talking transitional clothing and sweaters a few podcasts ago, I've seen it all over the place. I've heard about it, I've read about it, people are talking about it. So for once it was kind of nice that that I came up with it first. Nat came up with it first, but you know what I mean. I started talking about it first. So I really appreciate all the posts out there on some sweaters and giving us some ideas on transitional sweaters. And please keep posting and talk about transitional sweaters, what you're knitting on right now, because now is the perfect time. This is the kind of weather that we have in Central Illinois today, is really what those transitional sweaters are for. What do you wear when it's not 30 degrees and it's no longer 80 or 90? So I'd love to hear more about that. So in keeping with that, we had a little contest going for a pattern that I would give to the winner, and we had again a lot of choices in the group, and the winner is number 10, Pamela Too, Pamela Too, and Pamela talked about the weekend sweater, the Weekender sweater, and that is one of my favorites and one of my sweaters that I would love to knit and have some yarn set aside for this fall. So Pamela, if you will give me a message on Ravelry as to what sweater pattern you would like, I will make that happen in the next few days after this post into your library on Ravelry. And so congratulations, Pamela. I'm so glad to be able to give you a sweater pattern of your choice. And maybe it's the Weekender. Maybe that's what you want. So anyway, the title of this today is Go-Go Knitting Gadgets. I thought it would be fun to do some knitting gadgets. And My children are now grown. They're in their 30s now. I have twin boys. But back when they were younger, we used to watch on TV a cartoon called Inspector Gadget. And I love that show. And if any of you remember that, he had some really super cool gadgets. And it was fun. It was laughable. And he had long arms and multiple things, a hat that had that went off as a helicopter that he could fly out of danger. And so I started thinking about knitting gadgets, and I don't know if there are others like me. I'm sure there are, but knitting gadgets, I kind of gravitate towards a lot of the knitting gadgets. And so I'm going to try and show as many as I have time for today, but I think in future podcasts, this will be a regular segment called Knitting Gadgets. And I'm going to open up a thread on Ravelry, and I'd love for you to share with a group knitting gadgets that you have. And these could be ones that, as you can see, a couple that I have that I have were handmade. Others were ones that manufacturers have made. And so I'd love to know if there's others out there that have a favorite knitting gadget, and so we can talk about that. So we'll start off first of all with books and bags and the knitting, which I believe falls into the knitting gadget realm. My first one is for the books. This is a Knitter's Journal. This is a book that I purchased several of from Schoolhouse Press at Knitting Camp, and I have one that has if you go to Schoolhouse Press, they have two different covers. One of my covers has that I use, and I put all my knitting camp notes on every year when I come home. I put them in. I love to keep notes. I love to journal odd things, not daily. I did this, I ate that, but rather things that would be helpful to remember, to have on hand, to remember for later. I have a notebook that I keep stuff in, like notes for if I ever get to go to Rhinebeck, or notes if I ever get to go to EYF, or things that I should take, or particular helpful hints that others have given. And I kind of tuck these in the notebooks just because I want to keep them. I want just in case. And maybe I'll share with those in future episodes my kind of mini journaling systems. But anyway, I have another one, and I have Knitter's Journal, and this particular one right now is housing my projects. And yes, I do use Ravelry for my knitting projects, but as I am working on a particular project, I am making notes in here in my Knitter's Journal, and I'll put pieces of the yarn. I'll do the yarn label. I'll put a date, a start date, and then I will put an end date. I will put where I have picked up the yarn. I'll put who it's for, and the needles that I'm using on, because I have so many whips. Sometimes I need to go back and see perhaps a project that's in progress, and where those size 8 Chiaogus are if I needed to use them for something else. And then when I'm done, I'll put the finished date on it, and then I'll circle it in the color of the year. So this particular 2017 for me was red. And then when I go through at the end of the year in my notebook for the year for that, or the end of those pages, I will tally up what I call what I finished in 2017. And so I can go back to all the circled end dates in red and pick those up and put them in my Knitter's Journal. And then each project does go into Ravelry with the pertinent information, but at a quick glance at my chair at night, if I want to look up something that I've knit and say, oh, how many stitches did I cast on for that Heavenly Heathers, I've got it in my handy dandy Knitter's Journal. And again, I'm sure that when I'm gone, my children will see these books and say, what the heck? What the heck? But anyway, that's Books and Bags. That's books in the Books and Bags, a Knitter's Journal for Schoolhouse Press. And when I get done with this one, I'll pick up another notebook. It can be a spiral notebook. And again, down the road, I'll just share with you all my multiple little journals. We'll talk about journals that's possibilities for another podcast down the road. So anyway, and then in the bag section, I wanted to share with something that I picked up from Stitches Midwest from the Erin Lane booth. But this is a pattern keeper that you can put your pattern in. And the nice thing about this, again, this is from Erin Lane, and she has it in some sheepy fabric. And this one folds up, and you can take it and put it in your knitting bag. Folds up quickly, and then, you know, when you're somewhere and it has a nice heavy snap on it, flip it around, snap it together. It's got vinyl on it. Your pattern slides in here, and then you can use your sticky tape on there if you've got a chart, and you can move it along. And so this is from Erin Lane. This is her little pattern keeper. So that's bags in Books and Bags, and also a knitting gadget. Clever little idea. Loving that. So in keeping in some pattern keepers, this is one of the things that I wanted to share with you. This is a Leroy 2-in-1 magnet. This is a magnetic board that I picked up. Again, and you can get these off of Amazon. I got mine from Espace Tricot last winter. And it comes with magnet, and you can put your pattern on it. And again, move your ruler, or you can do sticky tape or whatever you want. And keep track of your pattern or your chart via magnet if this works better for you. And then several years ago when I was at knitting camp, not several, many, as in a decade or two, I picked up this wood block, and when I came home, a friend of mine made me some more of them. And just if you have a woodworker in your house that can do woodwork, has a little slanted cut in it. And this is super cool. And then holds your board for you. And you can set it down there and move it along. So great thing to keep your pattern upright if you have a table that you knit with, or if you're going to knitting and there's a table in front of you. And so there you go. A little something extra to keep your pattern in check. So again, handmade. And I don't know if a Schoolhouse Press still has these or not, but you might check their website as well. So I thought that was kind of like a cool little idea for keeping things in place. Another handmade item I had, and from my friend Marv, who also made my little block of wood, is what I'm calling a Lazy Susan, I guess. And this is nice for those where you want to put your yarn and you want to work from the outside of it. And I know that Sun Valley Fibers also has some of these versions of these. She has singles and doubles and triples. And again, on this particular one, you can put it on the floor, on the table, and then if you're working from the outside, you just go like that and pull your yarn off, and it just unwinds, or you can roll it around too, not get the yarn stuck. So anyway, this is a super cool knitting gadget for those ones where you want to just knit from the outside and you don't want that ball rolling all over. And I can tell you from experience that does happen, because on my blanket that I'm knitting on, the ball of yarn was huge, and I could not find the inside thread to pull out. I didn't want to pull, in my wisdom, did not want to pull from the outside because it'd be rolling all over the place. So I decided to roll it up. Like that wasn't going to roll all over the place. So when I got done, it was a huge ball, and I thought, well, I have this thing that I bought from Knit Circus years ago called a Yarnet, and I'll just pop it in my ball, in my Yarnet, the ball in the Yarnet. And it was too huge. It wouldn't stay. I couldn't get it in there. So it wasn't until last weekend that finally my ball got small enough that I can pull it out and it rolls around here. in it. This unscrews. And ideally, it would have been nice to do it from the top when I first started, but like I said, it was way, way, way too big for that. And then for a while, I just had the lid off and just let it sit in there so as kind of a yarn bowl. But this is called Yarn It. And the nice thing about this is if you are going, traveling in the car and you're not the one driving, you can pop this in your, pop that in your cup tray if you have a big next to you. So anyway, this is Yarn It, and it's come in quite handy recently, now that the ball works in it. So anyway, couple next things I want to talk to you about. While at knitting camp, one of the gals from the yarn that teaches at the yarnery showed us a technique, and I've talked about a little bit to some friends about how you can do steeks by felting. And I have to say that I saw this done at knitting camp by her. And I will also put in the show notes on Ravelry the link to the Rainey Sisters website, because they show some pictures of a sample that they have done successfully using this technique. I've not used it yet. It's down the future, way down the future. Just don't have time to do some samples right now. But I'm going to test this out because my steeking abilities could use a little work. But this is just some tools, and I will link again to the Rainey Sisters so that you can kind of see the process, what I'm talking about. So I purchased these off of Amazon, and again, this is just a needle felting tool that you go down and felt the seams with. This is the felting mat that you put under your steek, and then you use this tool from the wrong side to felt all the way down, and then you cut it. And then this is the other tool that, if you're using a hairy yarn after a while, to go and clean off the felting mat. So like I said, I have seen this in the works. It is super cool. I can't wait to try it down the road on a steek. So just food for thought again. Just information. Try it, don't try it. There's possibilities out there for you. So anyway, next up, something super cool here. Made a resurgence in our knitting group recently, but the thing is, I knew about this at some point in time from somewhere else. But you know those little bread ties that you get off of bread or buns? And if you have a long yarn at the start that you want to contain until you get ready to sew it together, and you know that long yarn is hanging down, and it's getting in your way, and you do the butterflies or whatever, you can use the bread tie to wrap that yarn around. And as you're knitting then, it just hangs there like a bobbin, stays contained. Isn't that super cool? Like I said, somebody brought it to knitting not too long ago, in the last couple of months, and I'm like, yeah, I did that years ago, because that's how long this particular scarf has been on the needles. But this one made the fish from last weekend. This is going to be, I'm going to work on it. It's a nice little simple project when you don't have anything better to do. But anyway, a little bread tie. So save those bread ties. Use them for bobbins. Use them for the ends of your knitting. A couple of years ago, in the Clover booth, we love to go to the Stitches Midwest. We love to go to the Clover booth and see all the new stuff that they have. And while there, I bought the giant group, as in giant, not giant clips, but the giant pack of little clippies from Clover that certainly will come in handy if you are doing any kind of seaming and not knitting in the round. You can do your little clippies. Clip your garment together and then mattress stitch it together so it kind of holds it. I thought those were super cool. And of course the colors are super wonderful too. So anyway, those are from Clover. And then, you know, like project bags, I must have this issue with lights. And so when we were in Rochester at ZK last year, Debbie and I made a trip up to the yarnery, and the night before we had seen somebody who was sitting in a darker area at ZK with an OTT light on, clipped, and of course we bought one, which is super cool. Has this little clip, so you can clip it to you if you want, or clip it to various things, I would imagine. But look at this OTT light, a portable little OTT light. That's super cool. And it is, I will tell you, it is super bright. You can position it down. Up. You want to see something? Want to go to the bathroom at night? You can use that. It's really bright, but this is an OTT light. So purchase one of those. And then a month later, I was at knitting camp, and Amy Dachin was sitting there with a lamp. And I thought, oh, I got to have one of those. So I came back and got it from Amazon. I have a problem. I have a flashlight problem, people, or light problem. But hey, in the interest of giving you products, showing you things that are out there, should you want to look into, I thought this was super cool as well. Okay. All right, this is definitely a go-go knitting gadget, people. I'm just saying, look at that. And again, we can set it down. Do not judge me. Anyway, super, super cool. And there's the light. It has a little, yeah, there. Well, just flap it down. There you go. There's the light button. You can position this wherever you want it. And it has three settings. Okay. But isn't that super cool? Compact, 4 AA batteries. It also has a USB port. So, hey, if you're driving down the road and you have access to a USB port and you're not the driver, and you can position this away from the driver, down on your lap, you could go a long way with that light. I couldn't resist, people. Okay, there is a whole lot of things to come in my little box that I am going to talk about in future shows, because I clearly have a penchant for knitting gadgets. That's so super cool. Couple more things before we end, and it's time to head off today. This was back from my sewing days, and I'm going to look and see if there's not a resource out here for these. And I finally found it. This is for doing buttonholes for sewing, to put in the proper spacing of them. And I'm sure that somebody's still making this. There was a metal one at one time, and this one's the wood one. But then you can just space out how long you want your buttonholes. And I think this would be perfect for down a sweater as well. That was my real thought, because sometimes I have a little bit of a problem spacing them out correctly. So you could space these out to sew after you put your buttonholes on. But you can use this to guide you across, as to making sure that if the buttonhole's here, that the button is directly across from it. So there's no worry about getting those buttons sewed on cattywampus. And also you can use it for marking buttonholes if you're a sewer. So I thought that was super cool. Found that in my notions bin, and we'll definitely be using that for future knitting projects as well. And then last of all for today is Circa. We bought this several years ago, again at Stitches Midwest. And this is a dual way of, if doing keeping track of increases, decreases, rows, or whatever you have. I urge you to check this out. There is YouTube video on the Circa on how to use that, and you can align your different things as you go around, and just super cool little gadget. I have to tell you, I don't use this as much as I thought I would. I've used it more in the past on certain things than I am right now, but that's just mostly because I haven't had the case to use it. And again, head out if you want more information on YouTube on how to use it. This is Circa. So, like I said, that's just a few of the gadgets that I want to share with you today. I thought when I started collecting all of these initially, when I thought about the episode, I thought, oh, there's no problem. I'll get through all of these gadgets that I've got. Some of them coming up are things that are in my Notions bag. Perhaps that's a future episode as well, Notion bags and what's in that. Right now, that's all that I have time to share with you today. I thank you so much again for stopping by and listening to me ramble about knitting gadgets and knitting in general. Join the PJ Knits Ravelry group. Subscribe here to YouTube, if you will, at PJ Knits. On Instagram, I am PJ Knits, and on Ravelry, I am Penny J. Sorry. And so please keep in contact via all those mediums. I love to talk about knitting, and I'd love to hear about any gadgets that you may have, or your knitting in general. Knitting is a passion, and I just super love it. As I said in the beginning, Labor Day is coming up in a week or so. I hope you all have a great Labor Day weekend. Be safe out there. And until next time we come back here to YouTube on PJ Knits, knit on with confidence and hope, and have a great time doing it. Thanks for stopping by. Bye-bye.